and do. All right.
What do we want to talk about today?
We don't want to talk about email infrastructure or our crackpot team. We'll save that for after. I know. Well, I was going to ask you a question, Ollie, about the but I was trying to figure out how to formulate it in terms of the content, niche authority, subject matter expertise, but formulate it in a matter formulate in a question that positions as a sales accelerant versus maybe we talk about, I don't know. Maybe we just talk about that, right?
I think we just talked about our process, like the 3 steps that we were talking about and how we're kind of reframing it in terms of the content is more of a sales accelerant. Let's just
how are you presenting it? You said that you were going to send me the new deck thing, which you haven't sent, but I know we've been back to back.
Yeah, I mean, well, how I'm presenting it is, I'm going how we originally presented it, right? Like step 1, the ICP and ideal client profile build out. Step 2 is the content build out. And then step 3 is the Dream 100.
Hey, turn your gain up. Gain, yeah.
Is that better?
Keep talking.
Test.
No, I think you need to do it the other way. Gain.
What about this way?
Nope, that's worse.
Okay, so
turn it all the way.
Maybe this way.
There you go. Turn
testing,
it all the
testing.
way.
Testing.
That's better.
1, 2.
Yeah,
it's better.
Okay,
that's better.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah, so I was originally presenting it as what we had in terms of step 1, step 2, and step 3. But I think what we're going to go is probably go more towards that. What we're just talking about with the Dream 100 being first, and then the content being third. I'm trying to think of a question that I can ask one of you guys about that itself.
Well, I want to ask you. I'll just pretend I'm a prospect. Hey, so walk me through the Dream 100 and what's the other 2 steps?
ICP and positioning, and then
ICP when I go to the bathroom,
and then
dad joke. Sorry,
content.
So how do you explain them? How do you explain if someone's so explain them? I get content, right? I get putting out content. I get the ICP, who our target is. What's the Dream 100, and how does that play into this?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think about how I want to answer this.
Yeah.
Too, for also a good piece of content.
You've said that the people.
So if you operate within a customer lifetime value of $50,000 or more, you probably have to build a lot of trust with your prospects, and you probably have to build relationships with them. One of the best methods that we've actually gone about building trust with your prospects is through what we call a relationship funnel. And the best way to build out this relationship funnel is to identify 100 dream clients that you want to get into a relationship with. And that's called the Dream 100 approach. It was famously coined by Chet Holmes. And the whole purpose of it is if you spend all of your time and energy into developing 100 relationships with your dream prospects and you continuously follow up with them, at some point they're going to turn into deal and deal flow. And so the Dream 100 is designed to initiate relationships with your prospects. And the way that we do it is instead of reaching out to these Dream 100 people and asking them to hop on a discovery call or a sales meeting so you can sell them something, we invite them to value forward events that they can come to, such as roundtables, podcasts, or live events that we can start to build those relationships with, and then ultimately turn that into deal flow.
I had looked that up. I was like, is that Chet Holmes or is that Russell Brunson?
I was doing this.
I know you were, because I saw you go and type in the same way I did.
Is it Chet Holmes? I was fucking bullshit.
It is Chet Holmes. Chet Holmes and Russell Brunson, but everyone always thinks of it as Russell Brunson because he's the one that made it popular over the last 20 years.
Okay, I
Yeah,
was like,
that's-
damn. I was like,
That's funny.
We
I
were
thought it was-
fact-checking it in
I
real
thought it was
time.
Russell Brunson because
I did too.
It's the Chet Holmes buyer's pyramid. So I was
Correct.
like,
That's what I
Ollie
thought too. But Chet Holmes is part of the Dream 100 too. So it's like, man, Chet Holmes is a pretty smart guy from the 70s.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. I was like, oh, we use a lot of Chet Holmes stuff, I guess.
He was big. He was really big back in the day. So
Was that good or lucky, Ollie?
what was that?
Did you actually know that I was Chet Holmes?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
was
yeah.
that
No, I knew
lucky?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember seeing that somewhere. You know, I just didn't know if I was getting confused, but I'm almost positive it was Chet Holmes, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's funny.
Damn, I feel like I'm drawing a blank on today in terms of what we should
I am
talk
too.
about.
For content, I feel like there's so much other stuff on my head that's not like content for our clients. I feel like our typical talking points are just kind of going blank to me right now. I'd rather just talk about like ads and all of that stuff right now.
Let's talk about ads then. Do you think? Let me ask you that. Do you think ads would? So we just started running ads. Ads obviously is coming out of the gate working well for us on Meta. Do you think ads could work for our clients?
Ooh,
I think that's
this is
a
something
really,
Luke and
really
I were
good-
talking about.
Yeah, Ollie and I spent a long time talking about this the other night, and I do think ads. Terrence, your camera just went out, by the way.
It does that. Hang on.
Anyways, will ads work for consulting firms, IT firms, high ticket service firms? And I think the answer is yes. I don't think there's really anybody that's out there necessarily running these campaigns successfully for these consulting firms at the moment. And I do think that there's definitely going to be some big obstacles to getting it to work. But the beautiful thing about running a consulting firm or a high ticket service firm or an IT firm is typically the lifetime value that you get from each customer is extremely high. And when you have an extremely high lifetime value, that means you can spend a lot more to acquire that customer. So it's this concept that we always go back to, which is, cost to acquire customer versus lifetime value of a customer. And with these consulting firms that have extremely high lifetime values of a customer, your ads might not get you the same number of meetings as, in a different industry or whatnot, but you don't really need that many meetings to see a return from your ad spend. Because, let's say you spend 5K on ads in a month, if that gets you 5 qualified meetings, so you're paying $1,000 for a meeting from ads, which is absurdly high. But if you're a consulting firm and you pay $1,000 for each of those meetings over the course of a month, if one of those closes, then you see a ridiculous return on investment on that ad spend. So I do think there is a scenario where consulting firms and high ticket service firms are going to be able to run ads very successfully. And I think that's something that we're going to crack moving forward here.
Yeah, I think part of it, right, and someone that's listening is like, I've tried ads for, I've tried Google or whatever, and putting a process in place that only allows your ideal client profile to get through to the point to even book a meeting, to where you're only paying for those type of meetings, per ad spend, is kind of one of the more important parts of it too. So I do see that working, but you can't just go blindly in and be like, great, spray and pray. Just like you can't do that with email outreach or LinkedIn outreach, etc.
And I mean, consulting founders who think ads aren't going to work for them, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody is on one of the Meta platforms. Like every single person is out there. So if you think your ICP is not on Meta, then you're wrong. And so if you're able, using the Meta algorithm, to put your ads in front of the right people, which you're going to be able to, the Meta algorithm is incredible at doing that, then you're going to, if your ad resonates with your target market, if you've truly built it the right way, if you're resonating with the pain points, you're going to get your ICP to click on your ads. And if you have that proper funnel built out, you're going to get them into those calls. And so, there's no reason it wouldn't work for consulting or IT firms like it does for every other industry. It's just the back end sales process, I think, is going to be a little bit different because it is a high touch, high relationship sale after that point. But just think of the ads as a way to get your ideal prospects into those conversations with you.
Yeah, I think ads can definitely work for consultants. They just have to run them a little bit differently than most agencies or most lower ticket providers, right? If you look through a common, ads funnel, you'll sometimes have this what's called a low ticket product to kind of liquidate the ad spend so that you can get people to upsell them into a higher ticket product. And I feel that the same methodology has to apply with consulting firms, because typically consulting firms that work with, enterprise or even mid-market, their deal sizes are going to be anywhere from like 500,000 to $1 million. It's not like you're going to be able to sell that right off the bat. So instead of going to that big consulting project that you're going to get inside with these companies, you should start with an audit or a workshop and have this serve as that low ticket item that can actually liquidate the ad spend that you're spending, and then also being able to upsell those into the bigger ticket size deals, right? And then to Luke's point, the customer LTV is so great. So if you only spend, $5,000 to acquire, one audit, for example, that can liquidate that ad spend. And then if you just get 3 audits and one of those turn into an actual deal, that means you just have to spend $15,000 essentially to get a $500,000 deal. And the CAC to LTV ratio becomes pretty gnarly for these consulting firms.
And the reason that most consulting firms, IT firms, high ticket service firms feel like ads don't work for them is because when you really think about it, like in all those industries, it's an incredibly long sales cycle. And so when you're spending money on ads, let's say you're putting $5K a month into ads. You're going to put $5K into ads the first month, $5K into ads the second month, $5K into ads in the third month. And if the sales cycle for your business is 6 to 12 months, then you're going to have to spend money on ads for 6 to 12 months before you actually see any return on the investment. And that's something that you're just going to have to stomach. But that's why I really like your approach, Ali, is if you have some sort of irresistible self-liquidating offer on the front of it, then you're covering your ad cost. And so instead of just sending your money into a black hole for those first 6 months while the sales cycle develops, you're going to be at least covering your ad costs with those audits, with whatever that self-liquidating offer is on the front end. So I think that's really the key, because if you spend money on ads for 6 months, $5K a month, that's $30K that you've spent on ads. And if you haven't seen any return on that investment, then you're going to say, this doesn't work for my business. And you cut it off before you actually see the fruits of your labor. But if you have some sort of self-liquidating offer on the front end, then you're going to extend your runway and you're going to be able to actually see the fruits at the end of the tunnel.
I think the self-liquidating part of ads and running ads and ad spend is actually something that doesn't get talked about a lot and should be, because to your point, Luke, when you first start running ads, you are investing in the process, right? You're buying data. You're like, okay, great. Are we targeting the right people, right? And you start spending 5, 10, 15 grand, whatever it may be. And understanding that, and that can look like you're spending into a black hole if you don't have some sort of liquidating offer that you can associate and kind of offset. So some revenue generating aspect of whatever your offer may be to offset the ad expenditure, so that you're not looking at it as spending money into a black hole. You're attributing it to part of your funnel process, right? And understanding that, I'm going to use this revenue that I generate. So if I talk to 10 people from ads that are targeting my CP, and I make that same offer to 10 for, let's call it, $10,000 for an audit, and I get 2 of them to accept, that's $20,000 of revenue that I can then use to liquidate the ad expenditure.
And I love, the beauty of once you start running ads for long enough and you start to understand what your cost to acquire a customer is going to be. I love the idea of adding in some sort of setup fee or setup offer on the front end of your offer to match up with whatever your cost to acquire a customer is. So if your customer acquisition cost is $1,000, then adding in some sort of setup fee or setup offer at the front of it that you have the client pay to set up the infrastructure, book their onboarding spot, reserve their spot. By having them pay that very simple setup fee, you're liquidating your ad cost, and it's going directly to fund your customer acquisition. And then everything that they were going to pay you on the back end is pure profit. And so that's why I think having some sort of setup offer is so key, because it allows you to, like everything we talk about, it allows you to extend your runway. Like if you're covering your ad costs with the setup fee, you're covering your customer acquisition costs with that, then you can keep pouring more and more money into ads without having to go into a hole and waiting to make back your money.
It's just a revenue. It's just some of it actually is like a little bit of a mindset or a mind trick that you do. It's just basically a revenue attribution, right? So instead of saying, I'm spending, $5,000 a month and hoping to get this $250,000 project deal, right, in 6 months, right, and saying, oh my gosh, that's going to be 5 months or 6 months times $5,000 ad spend. That's 30,000 to maybe get this $250,000 deal. You're kind of doing some revenue trickery in your head, right, to basically say, hey, hang on there, right? Like, let's attribute some revenue from this low ticket offer, a $10,000 audit, right? That then I can then use to allow me to go, okay, I'm good with that runway of that 30K. It's going to cost me over 6 months at $5,000 a month ad spend, right? Because if I can sell 2 of those, okay, good. Now I can offset 20,000 of that 30,000 in ad spend. So then it's really just 10,000 to get me closer to that $250,000 project. Some of it, that self-liquidating, is just attribution of revenue that you can get to sooner to offset the ad expenditures.
And using a self-liquidating offer within your sales process and also within the funnel is also going to be able to be an opportunity for you to be able to provide value and trust that could also speed up your sales cycle for a bigger ticket project, right? So it correlates with the trust that's typically needed to close these bigger deals. If you do an audit for $5,000 and you completely blow them away and you blow their expectations and they're like, this was the most valuable audit that we've ever had, they're going to be much more likely to want to work with you and extend their project scope to be to that $250,000 or $500,000 that they were originally looking for.
100%. I mean, the IT and the consulting industries, they're relationship based, and that nature is not going to change whether you're running ads, whether you're running outbound. Like, there's nothing that can change the relationship based nature of these industries. And so even if you are running ads and you're getting people with a little bit more like direct intent, like what some people call like a warm lead, they're not going to go from just being a person that doesn't know you, doesn't like you, doesn't trust you, to being ready to pay you 500, a million, whatever it may be that your typical offer is. And so you have to take baby steps. Just like in any relationship building process, there needs to be baby steps that allow you to build trust over time until they're ready to make that big investment with you. And so that's why ads and cold outbound and every traditional marketing tactic is typically so unsuccessful for these industries, is because it tries to fight that relationship based nature. You're not going to get a cold lead to go from not knowing you to a $500,000 project overnight. You're going to have to get there over time, and you're going to have to build that trust and build that relationship.
The Bible of digital marketing by the .com Secrets by Russell Brunson, he talks about this methodology, right? He's really who kind of coined the whole funnel concept, right? Having this low ticket, starting off with a super low ticket item, and then having them go through these different steps when they buy things, and then bring them to a higher ticket. But it was all through a purpose of building trust and starting off with a lower ticket item that has lower friction to get someone to make that first step, and then having this whole system that then brings them to your higher ticket product that you're eventually trying to take them to. So it's really been this methodology from the beginning. And really, when you just look at the fundamentals, that's what you have to be able to apply to whatever thing that you're selling.
And so many consulting and IT firms miss this point. They do not have some sort of entry point offer. They do not have an ecosystem where they can bring people through, where it's slow, small steps, gradually building trust. And they don't have anything like this because most consulting and IT firms, they've grown their business up to this point based on referrals and word of mouth. And so when a referral lead comes in, they typically have a very, specific problem that they want your help fixing. And since it's coming in through a referral, there's already built up trust and there's already a built up relationship there. And that whoever is referring that deal to you is bridging the relationship gap and bridging the trust gap. So they're more likely to trust you and go into that high ticket project right away. But if you're going out to a cold market and trying to build your own pipeline for your consulting firm or your IT firm or your high ticket B2B service firm, it's not going to be the same way. You have to have that suite of products and entry points where you can take them through that and build trust before they're ready to go to your core offering.
Yeah, Luke and I were working out the math the other day, and we were like thinking about it, and I was like, man, I wonder if, because I've never seen consulting firms really run like a VSL funnel, right? I've never even like heard of consulting firms like running a VSL funnel the way that we're running a funnel. I'm like, man, imagine if they ran it the same kind of VSL funnel to an audit, right? And they drove everyone to an audit, right? And they just try to sign up people for the audit so that they can then on the back end be able to upsell them through, a consulting project. And like their CAC to LTV ratio would be insane.
Yeah, because you only need to get one person to like
Right.
liquidate your entire ad spend for 3 years.
I
Like,
wonder if like I know Brooks does a lot of, it's all his firms are like AI type firms. And part of why I bet that they probably haven't done it is because most of them, like what we're talking to them, what we're bringing to them is fire to a caveman, right? Which is like
Exactly.
like, hey, I don't have a target ICP, I don't have a messaging, I don't have a go to market offer, right? Like any of that. So like that's kind of step one before you can even go to ads in the first place.
And what Luke and I were talking about is that I don't think really anyone's doing it, and there's such a massive opportunity, because if you look at like where all the funnels are being built out, like where like people are the most sophisticated marketers, typically in the info space, right? The info space and like even like the agency space, they're really good marketers, and they have all the VSL funnels built out. And I feel that those types of funnels, are almost seeing a little bit, not fatigue, but you have to be really good at what you do to be able to get the right metrics that you're looking for. In the consulting space, I feel like there's less competition with probably ads and people running them, because they're not really doing a lot of VSLs. And to your point, Terrence, it's almost like sharing, fire with a caveman in that sense, because of the fact that not a lot of people are running them. And I was just seeing a big opportunity for us to be able to like, hey man, maybe that's somewhere that we're trying to, if we can crack the ads for us, that's somewhere that we should maybe go to for our client, for consulting clients.
I think we have a huge opportunity there, because
baby steps though.
Yeah, baby steps. But like Fazio said, man, like Fazio was telling us, he doesn't know anybody else really that's going after helping the IT market grow, because it is so hard. It is so tough. And so if there's not many agencies or anything like that going after the market, it's not like these consulting founders or whatnot or IT founders are building out their own ad funnels. They're not running their own ad campaigns, because that's 10 steps above, what they're doing right now. And so I do think that we should, the idea, Terrence, that Ollie and I had the other night was at some point, and Marianne, if you're listening to this, don't cut this up for clips, but we were talking about at some point, like when our cash flow situation is better, basically going to Chris at Rhino and being like, look, you're paying us $4K a month. Let us take that $4K a month and put it into ad spend for you. You'd be spending it on us anyways, and let us run this and let us test it, because I think it'll work.
So here's a question. What would you run it to? Because here's another thought, which is you combine that with the podcast method, or that with a roundtable method, right? So you basically are using the meta and ad spend to target the people that you want to pull into a roundtable or a LinkedIn Live event. And in a Dream 100, well, you can't get that granular. You can't get that targeted. I guess you could if you really put the filters in place.
I think you just run it to an audit. I think just run it to a really, really valuable audit or a really valuable workshop. And then like you talk about problems that they're probably experiencing, and then also talk about, things that you can help out with, like in terms of that, but just like, hey, you drive everyone to this super valuable audit that's either like $2,000 to $3,000 or whatever it is. And it's going to give you X amount, give you X and give you X. And then you basically just get them into the ecosystem that way. Right. And you just run that into the ecosystem.
You make the offer the audit. Like you don't even think about the back.
I was telling even Luke to make it like, even give them like 100% money back guarantee with the audit, like have it super like reverse the risk.
Of the clients that we have or had, who would be like, I'm thinking like even Jihad.
Jihad would have loved doing that. I think
Adam a good fit. Like
I think Adam at CloudRev would have been good for that too.
Yeah.
I think
I wouldn't spend, but yeah. Well,
I think people who like, I think it matters a lot, the person, like, because like it has to be someone that we have a lot of confidence in. Like I have a ton of confidence in Chris at Rhino. I had
I
a
do
lot of
too.
confidence in Adam at CloudRev as being like a good people person,
Yeah.
knowing his shit. I know
Yeah.
Jihad knew his stuff. Like they have to be someone who we have a lot of confidence in, because the audit is just your foot in the door, and it's up to the client then to really blow them away and build that relationship through the audit. But what I would do for Rhino is I would run a funnel, basically being like, a are you an IT director? Are you a healthcare IT director struggling with XYZ compliance issue or something like that? Whatever like the top Rhino pain point is. And then if they are, they're going to click on it. And then they'd go to a VSL where Chris is talking for 10 minutes about the audit and how, like, what we'll do for you is we'll go in, we'll figure out where you're struggling, use XYZ steps. We have 100% money back guarantee on the audit if you don't see the value in it. And then it'd run it to a sales call with Chris. So, because I think what you were talking about, Terrence, like the podcast or roundtable or whatever, I basically see that as kind of like a lead magnet. And like in Fazio's stuff, he
gotcha.
says over and over and over, he's like, I've never seen a lead magnet funnel outperform a just being fucking direct and telling people what you're going to do for them funnel.
Yeah.
And the only thing, like the only thing that I would add, that I'm now thinking through would be like the TAM issue. Like like how does ads work if you have a small TAM?
That's the problem. So that's, by the way, what I was going to say, right? Which is you
Maybe
need to
there's a
have a bigger
reason.
TAM, because you can't micro. The only way for you to manipulate that, to micro target, so meaning you can't go, you used to. So back 10 plus years ago, when we were first doing running ads on Meta or on Facebook, then you could take what we call a lookalike list. So you could take a list of like your top 100 clients.
You
and
can't do that anymore?
You can still do a lookalike audience. So meaning we could still take, by the way, our list of all the people that have opted in at certain funnels and take that over and use that as a targeting lookalike audience. But what you can't do is say you can't do a small targeting list. Be like, give me 100, but I only want these. I only want CEOs of Fortune 100, right? And serve, or even a list of those Fortune 100 CEOs and run ads just targeting them.
Doesn't the Meta algorithm do a pretty good job of figuring it out based on what you call out?
Well, not only call out, but also the friction that you would put in place in between for them for you to consider.
I guess
that
what is like
conversion.
what's a big, like how big does your TAM have to be in order to run ads?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
Because at some point, so I'd say you'd at least have to have, what do we consider to be a small TAM? So which one of our, without naming clients, which one of our clients has like small TAM, and how many are in that?
Say a couple.
Without naming client, I mean, our clients over the
yeah. I know what you're gonna say.
Our healthcare IT client, I thought had a small. I mean, the TAM was like 1,000 when we started, which is tiny, but we've had although they've worked really well with us on like expanding TAM, targeting other people. Like they've done a really good job of working with us on that. I think that's a big part, is like, if you're going to run these strategies, you have to be willing to work with us in terms of like, okay, yes, this is my perfect client, but we can, like, I don't know.
Yeah. So to that point, I mean, I will jump on that, right? So like we've had prospects that come to us before and say, hey, I only want to target, companies that are doing $1 billion in revenue, that have 10,000 plus employees. And it's like, okay. And in a specific region, right? And it's like, okay, that's pretty finite, right? Like there's only and in that case, that's probably not going to be a candidate for ads unless you were targeting multiple people in that organization. You said, hey, okay, great, right? Like anyone that's a sales director.
Yeah, I wonder how that works. Like if you do like, because I'm sure like even if you go after like, that's a good point. Like even if they have a smaller TAM per se, right? You would just need to open up the job titles in terms of who you would be able to have a conversation with. I think that would be like the
So
caveat there.
but that goes through the filtering
So
process.
like if you're a manager or you're a director or you're a C-suite executive, that would basically be like you'd have to open up all the job titles to that.
which there are probably some clients that are like, hey, I just need my foot in that door of that
Yeah.
organization, right? And anyone that's sold an enterprise level knows that it's like it's a matter of just getting in and then kind of spider webbing your way through the organization to get where you want to go. Like no one goes, of course, everyone would love to just get to the C-suite in an enterprise level, but that's not going to happen. So you kind of find your way in. So in that case, you could do that, right? Like you could expand your TAM to more job titles that would get you into an organization, especially
Because what
from an audit
happens?
standpoint.
What happens like if like Meta goes through all of like shows your ad to all the people within your TAM? Like what happens then?
So here's let me start backwards from that. So the one thing that we all have to address with Meta is they have by far the most data than any platform on us, and that includes Google. Google will have search functions, but we've put more data into like Meta knows. Facebook knows everything about me because I was an idiot, just like everybody else when we first started. It was like, yeah, I'm going to tell you my birthday. I'm going to tell you who I'm related to. I'm going to tell you my job interest. I'm going to tell you the groups I'm in. I'm going to give you every piece. Like they know everything about me, right? So much the same way they know a lot about everybody, right? Including you, even if you're not inputting the data on there, because your sister may have, your aunt may have, whatever, right? And so they're connecting. So they have a ton of data to start with. They know. That's why they're so good now at being able to target other people. So we just started that ad campaign targeting, IT firms, and like they're immediately coming through. We're like, wow, that's crazy. Like, how did they do that? And we didn't put any targeting or anything in there whatsoever. Now, we could say, hey, it's because we did a good job of doing our call out in the ad itself, which is true. But once that conversion picture starts firing, right, basically saying, hey, this is the people that they want to talk to, they're going to go put that ad in front of people based on the data that they already have, right? They're not showing us the data. They're just asking us to tell you, hey, who do you want to talk to? We want to talk to IT firms and founders that are between 1 and 20 million.
I'm really thinking about it because I think using like the healthcare IT space is a really good example because I mean there's only so many, healthcare IT directors, healthcare IT like CIOs, VPs of IT. But what I do think is like it all comes back down to that question of lifetime value. Like we could run ad campaigns for this client that we're talking about to the IT department, the healthcare IT department, and the same, like just over the course of a year, just hit different pain points, constantly be hitting new pain point. Something might pop up, and it's like you only need a couple of those people to convert over the course of a year. So if you hit them, even if it's a small TAM, if you hit those same 1,000 people with different ad angles throughout the year and you hit them at different times throughout the year, they might have a budget at that time, or they might have a specific need at the time. And so if you just put it in front of them, that same, like if you put Chris's face in front of the same 1,000 healthcare IT people over the course of a year, I think you're going to have success with that. Like, I don't think the TAM necessarily matters. Like, you just keep hitting them and hitting them and hitting them.
I think it would be a client that we had already shown the results to with the Dream 100 approach before they're willing to stomach an additional $5,000 a month on
or unless we get some good case studies of doing it for somebody else.
Correct.
Which is kind of why I was thinking with like when Ollie and I were talking, we tell Chris, like, look, you were going to pay us this $4,000 a month anyways.
Right.
Just put it into ads and we'll still run all the same services for you for free. But we want to use you as our test case.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's
I think it's a good idea. I'm not sure that they're the best ones to test it with. I think we need to talk through that one. Because here's the thing. Let's look at the components of what you would need. Let's look at the components of what you need. You need to proven the process, and the demand for whatever is audit, right? Like, so you'd have to make sure you'd have to know the pain points of whatever that ICP has
Mhm.
and an audit that coincides with it. You'd want to do that previously. So doing it on cold outreach, whether it's email or LinkedIn or whatnot. So you'd want to have that established to where you're like, okay, we know that there's a market for this type of audit. We know
Yeah.
we've had other clients tell me that they're willing to pay for that. Once you have that, then I think you can, because then you're like, okay, great. Then it's just a matter of connecting that same audit to the ICP that you're going after in ads. But I think you have to prove that out first. And I'm not sure if they have that yet.
You know who I think would be good for ad spend? Would be Dale.
Yeah, me too.
Because Dale, every single client Dale takes on, he gives a 1 month like free trial of their
Yeah.
thing anyways.
Good
He
offer.
literally goes, installs it all, does it all for free, and then he said,
And you know why it'd also be
nobody
good too?
leaves.
Because he has a huge TAM.
Huge TAM.
He's got a huge TAM.
Dale would do great with ads. Like, think about running ads to property. Like, you'd be running ads to property managers to, like, that's a massive TAM.
So there's the other problem that you get with the massive TAM. Then you have the sales force. You have to have the ability to process. I agree with you guys. I think that probably would be a better example of someone. But
I think the biggest thing like we'd have to do if we ever wanted like to like test it with clients is like kind of Luke's point where it's like, hey, dude, like let's just throw all what you're paying us right now into the ad spend and we get a revenue share.
Yep.
Like,
oh yeah, well I like that.
Yeah.
we get like
because then it's we need to make it no loss for them. And if they would have been paying it to us anyways, like,
yeah, just give us a rev share. Just give us like
Yeah.
10% rev share. We just negotiate rev share.
I like
right?
that. I like that even with Dale. Even again, I'd want him to be on with us for a few more months before we pitch that. But we could talk. We could start talking.
I mean, we have to get better at ads too as we're running it. But I feel like I was asking Luke. I was like, Luke, like how like confident do you feel like that we could do this for our clients?
I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to have everybody come in on our market dominator 5,500 a month. And then I think we're going to choose our ponies basically.
A select few, because the
Yeah.
only thing
Yes.
with running ads is it's very, very time, like there's a lot of energy that goes into it. So we have to be very selective of the people that we do run ads with. And we
I
just
basically see it as like we pull in all these clients, and then the ones that we think are the best fit for ads, we make that pitch to them. I'd go set up their whole ad like structure for them. We'd take a rev share on it, and like very limited
Yes.
number of them.
This is that is the way that we would do it,
Mhm.
because there's so much. Think about how hard it sometimes can be with just doing the cold outreach
Mhm.
and the podcast method or the roundtable method or whatever. You go into ads and you start explaining VSLs and stuff like that and how we're going to set the ClickFunnels. It's like we would just want to do it. So we basically would prove it out using cold outreach and then go, hey, let's do a rev share, right? Based on this. We'll set up the entire funnel. We'll pay for the ads. We'll manage it. And we do a rev share on that. But we'd have to, and again, we'd be involved in the self-liquidating offer though, too.
we'd have to make sure that like there'd be a couple. We'd have to look at their metrics, like look at what they're closing, and then be like, okay, like if they close at this percentage, like how much money are we gonna make, right? We have to go into figuring out like, okay, this they're gonna have to be.
It would have to be our big bets, basically, where we're saying
Yeah.
like it's worth to Aaron's, Ollie, and my time to go in there and like do this one-time big setup for them and run it on go. Like we'd have to make our bets on that.
And I think it's pretty like, I mean, once you find the winning campaign, how like much management is it of it afterwards?
If you ask Daniel Fazio, he says 5 minutes a day. So
Wow.
I think it's gotten a lot
pretty
better.
easy.
Like I can tell you back 10 plus years ago, it was a lot of work, a ton of work. And I think part of whether it's AI or Meta getting better, targeting and doing that stuff and automating it, it's become, I think, much.
I mean, I think it's a lot easier just because, like what Fazio said, Fazio doesn't want you to be creating a shit ton of new creatives. He wants you to basically take the creatives, because I don't know if you watched that thing, Ollie, but he's basically like the first ad creatives that you create always do the best because they're the ones that you've been like they're the pain points and stuff that you've been hearing for so long. And so then you create your first ad set and you make it with all those pain points. And then you try and create tons of new creatives and you try different angles. And it's like the baseline ones that you've known all along, like relying on referrals, inconsistent revenue, those are the ones that are always going to win. And so as Fazio said, instead of trying to constantly create new creatives, just get the same people or different people to say the same thing in different ways and say it over and over and over again. And then everything on the back end is what matters. Like add in more calendar space, optimize the funnel. But like he really doesn't advocate for doing a shit ton of different creatives.
It's almost
He's like,
opposite of kind of what Jacob and FEGP do.
It really is. Fazio, I like Fazio's method a lot better. It's
Jacob and FEGP, they test tons of creatives.
That was the old methodology, by the way. That was, if you had asked me, I'd have been like, yeah, that's the way it's going to be, right? Like that, you're just going to have to test a shit ton of creatives and keep doing that. And it wasn't until Fazio, I was like, oh, this is far more simplistic. But you're right. But the way that Jacob and Jordan are doing it are the way it has been done for a long period of time. But this is,
I like what Fazio says because it's just like with cold email, where like when you find that winning angle, where you're like you find that winning pain point, you go all in on that pain point and you just say it different ways over and over and over and over again. And it's with ads, it's like we know what the pain points are, so why would we get cute and fancy? Just like put the same pain point in different formats and run it. Infinitely.
Luckily, there's three of us, so we can run the three of us. But yeah. I will tell you, I spent this weekend looking at competitor ads, not even competitors, but just people that are in our space. And I'm finding that there's a number of folks that are doing it with different people saying their message. Like there's one guy, I'll have to give it to you. The agency is under his name, but he's having different younger females do his messaging. Did you see that one?
I always crack up because I see all the time on my Instagram, I see some hot girl pop up talking about FEGP. She's like, it's for the growth partner. She's like, we built this. I'm like, this is, I know everybody in
I'll bet you right now, if I scroll through my feed on my mobile, I bet I can probably find it.
Just cracks me up because I'm like, I know Jacob just paid some hot girl to say their ads.
It's just they get face fatigue, you know?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's another part of it with like the small TAM guys. Like if we're running it for like Rhino with 1,000 TAM, you just get different people within Rhino to say it and say the pain points over and over throughout the year, different people saying it. And then eventually, if we get the pain points right, they're going to have that pain point at some point and they're going to click on it. I don't
That's
think
even what I'm realizing with copy, even like there's copy fatigue, right? Like even when you're like running the same, like, like outreach message, like what you just have to do is you just have to really tweak the copy to change it. You could just say the exact same thing, but just say it a different way and be able to get a better response.
That's what's exciting to me about going direct with some of our email stuff is because we've run the podcast method to everybody over the past year, but we can totally just go back to all of our old IT people and run the direct offer towards them.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to remember like that they got a podcast invite from Grow IT a long time ago.
They won't. I mean, how many times have we seen that where people even like, respond a number of times?
Oh, yeah.
I was just digging while we were talking. I was digging into Meta, and we're handcuffed right now. We can only spend $50 a day on ads. Yesterday's limit was something, and then today's was 50, and they're slowly increasing us.
God, they haven't changed that a bit. It's funny because I was talking about. Remember, I was telling you, look, I was like, no, man, here's what's happening. Like, here's what's happening. And I was talking about with Brooks because we've used Meta for so long, or back in the day. It's the same
you basically have to like warm up a Meta account.
Sort of. There's just different things. Like, and if you made a big jump in ad spend, it would go into the same throttling. So like we used to see this a lot of times, and especially when we were running like affiliate marketing campaigns or campaigns that were like working, we're like, dude, we need to scale this, right? So like back in the day when we were running to like affiliate offers or to like offers that were for call centers, for like student loans or for credit repair, whatever, there was like no cap. They're just like, great. And I don't mean no cap as in the slang as you guys say today, but like there was no cap on basically number of calls. No cap. Yeah. But, so you would basically be like, you'd hit a winning campaign and be like going from like 1,000 a day to like, I want to spend 10K a day on it. And it would just throttle you right immediately. Cause they're like, cause what happens is this happened way more egregiously back in the day, but you have, scammers basically going on there and basically running them to shady affiliate type offers for like diet pills, celebrity and endorsed diet pills type of things that weren't really accurate. And so basically they'd create an ad. You guys have seen them before. Create an ad, right? And be like, and then they would get the ad approved. And then they have what's called cloakers, and basically would divert traffic, right? And so basically they had a list of IPs that Facebook checkers would be using. There'd be some that would be in San Francisco, but then there'd be others in like some weird, like Dublin, Ireland, right? And so they would turn the cloaker on, and so they would go to this landing page that was just benign, and then they start running traffic, and then they divert it over to their shady and celebrity endorsement landing page. And so what happens is you start spending really fast, and then they would throttle it. And as soon as they throttle it, and they turn the cloaker back on and be like, nope, we're sending it back to this page. All sorts of shady stuff like that, right? Don't ask me how I know. But anyway, point being is that will continue to happen. Just sometimes it happens over time where there's no ad spend. Some days you'll just have zero, you'll be like, what's going on? And it's just Meta being Meta. Sometimes it gets caught up in their ad spend algos, and sometimes it'll just go in for a manual. Sometimes it'll sit there for 3 days, no ad spend. You could be running for months. You can have 3 days. You're just like, what's going on? And then it'll just turn on again.
Yeah. Ads are so cool.
They are so cool.
It is great for that instant water spigot turn on, right? Yeah. Like, look, all of a sudden we turned it on yesterday or the day before. We've got like 2 or 3 meetings and opt-ins. Like, man, it's like magic, right? Like it's literally turning the spigot on and off, which
it's pissing me off that they're capping us. I'm on with support right now. They say you can submit a request to have ad spend up.
Yeah, so have fun with that. Goes. Yeah, have fun with that.
I don't want to just spend 50 a day when we know we can print meetings with it.
It'll in time it'll happen. And again, you just gotta let it do its thing. Remember, back in November, December, and I was like, trust me, we should just start it now because it's gonna take like 2 or 3 weeks of this like start and stop stuff. Yeah. But it's all good.
God, Meta is so much better than LinkedIn, though. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I do.
That's one thing I regret is doing LinkedIn.
Dude, I regret that thing.
It was bad timing. But you guys have to admit, like we had the podcast method running on InMail, so it makes logical sense to be like, oh, let's just do the sponsored version of it.
Yeah.
And part of it, even I still have the date up. There were things that we could have done to block out certain titles that came up, but
we just shouldn't have run ads to our indirect offer. Like I really
you know what it was. I think it's also like we just didn't like the beautiful thing about Meta is that we're following Fazio. Like we have everything that Fazio is doing, and we know it worked. With LinkedIn, we didn't really know. We were just like running it ourselves, not really like following anything. From someone who's done it before.
True, but we also made the logical jump, which says, we had the same process work on InMails, both on Connect and Message and on messaging to open profiles. That has worked. LinkedIn has the exact same thing called sponsored InMail that it's like, okay, we know our metrics. We've been running it for a year. This is the exact same process, allegedly. So it should work even with a lower degree of effectiveness. You guys are laughing. Like,
no, it made logical sense.
That's my point. Like, don't look at me like I forced this into it. It made logical sense as to why we were doing it.
It did. We were all on board with it.
I mean, we all supported it. I supported it. You brought it up. I was like, yeah, it sounds
listen, I wasn't as adamant saying it's going to work like the account executive will work. Right. I was probably pretty close. I was like, this is going to work.
No, I mean, we were all on board because it made sense.
It made logical sense. Right.
I do think with ads thing on LinkedIn that it can be effective in terms of like, it's the same type of where LinkedIn falls off is the data and to be able to to position it in front of the right people. But you can still put winning type
You would
of
think it'd be
ads and
better at
videos.
that too.
What's
Like,
that?
That's you'd think it would be better at that. Like that's the funny
They've
thing.
got
too.
tons of data. Although some of it's limited, they don't have personal data. And what I mean by that is like they don't know family members. They don't know, like, there's a lot of that. They're very superficial in like company, school, right? Like, and connections aren't even like, at least with Facebook, your friends, for the most part, let's call it 70%, are like people that you know. Like there is a connection. And so
Yeah.
that's why Meta is so good at it too. Not only the data you give them, they're connecting the web of true friends. Where LinkedIn, it's like, yeah, man, I got 12,000 connections. I couldn't tell you who most of them are, right? And there's no like direct. So for them to make inferences about why I'm connected to certain people, other than just the basics, which is like, oh, they're in the same industry or they were in the same industry, they're limited. But they
By
should.
the way, my Meta support request got denied already.
I know.
You were right.
You can see my laugh. Like, go ahead. See how that goes.
Did you see Oliver's response? Are we done, by the way?
Where I can stop it. Let's
Yeah,
stop
let's
it.
stop
If
there.
we're
Yeah. I mean,
None of that should be even.
we gotta plan these out a little bit more.
I think today is just a weird day. I don't think
Yeah,
Yeah, today's a weird one.